Hello, my name is Alan, and welcome to my video series on how to build a Windows desktop application using Python. A couple things I want to point out before we begin is, one, this isn't really a how to program Python type series. It's more of what I would call a recipe series. If you just follow these steps, you'll be able to accomplish what we want to do here, which is build a Windows desktop application. It's not prerequisite that you know Python, but it certainly will help. And the other thing I'd like to point out is what I'm going to show you is really how I like to build it. Doesn't mean it's the best way to build it. I'm sure there will be I'm hopeful there'll be some good comments below that will point out some of the things I'm doing that could be done better. And I look forward to reading those. But until then, let's go ahead and get started. And if you haven't already done so, let's install Python. So if we open our browser, type python.org, go to downloads. I'm going to install a slightly older version of Python just because my code was built on this version, but you probably can use any version you like. I'm going to use 3.7.1. Download the largest one, which is this one. Run our installer. Make sure you check the box for adding Python to your path. Custom install, check all the options, check all these options, and I like to install Python at the root folder. And while that's installing, if you look in the description below, you'll see there's a reference for a zip file. If you download that zip file and open it, you'll see there's a source code folder in there. Close our installer. If you open Windows Explorer to where you like to put your source code, in my case I like to put it on my faster drive, my D drive, under a folder called Allen. I'm going to move it here. If we open that source code folder, we'll see there's the first folder is a bin folder, which has some helper scripts that we're going to need to have accessible from our system path. So we need to add the bin folder to our system path. To do that, if we open the Start window and type in env for Edit System Environment Variables, and then click Environment Variables, and then for our system variable, our path, we want to edit it. See, you can see Python's added itself to the path. We want to add a new one. I'll browse to our bin folder, which I put under my D drive, under source. So we click bin. Now we have the D Allen source bin folder has been added. I'm going to move it up to the top. Click OK. Close that. So now we've added this bin folder to our system path so that it can be found. So our first step, we need to open a command window. Go to Start Command and type cmd. And we want to install our Python PyQt package. And the command to do that is pip install capital P Y capital Q T 5. And you can see I'm getting an error because my version of Python is so dated. My pip installer is outdated as well, and we need to upgrade that. Copy this command right here. And that will upgrade our pip. Now we can install PyQt, pip install PyQt5. And we have one other PyQt package we need to install. It's the pip install all lowercase PyQt5 tools package. The tools package includes the designer application, which we'll need to actually design our user interfaces. So we close that and we go to click on our C drive where we installed Python. And if we search for designer.exe, you should be able to find it, and there it is. Open our folder location for it. So if we open that, you'll see we have several different templates we can choose, but we're going to choose main window and hit create. And it gives us our default window. We can size it. If we look to our right, here's all the characteristics or attributes that we can affect for our window, including things like the window title. We can change it to something like hello. There you go. And our first window, we're not going to actually use a menuing system, which it's providing for us right here. So we're going to remove that. So if we right click on it, hit remove menu bar. So we're just going to have a plain window with no menu. And on our left side, we have all of the different widgets that we can add, including like a checkbox, push button, radio buttons, combo boxes, all kinds of different widgets. We're just going to choose push button to start with and put it in the middle here. And we'll change the title of it. We can change it right here in the interface. Use that to hello as well. And since we have this selected, our attributes are contextual. If we select our window, we can see we're going to get our object name says main window. And if we select our button, we can see our object name is push button, and all the attributes are regarding that push button. Or if we select our window, all our attributes are regarding the window. If we want to have Python display this window, first we need to save it. And we're going to save it to our source code directory again, d-allen source. And we have a subfolder called test2. I'd like to put it there. We'll name this main.ui. Hit save. We'll close our designer window right now, and we'll go to our source code folder, test2, and there's our main.ui. So if we open source code editor, in my case Sublime, and look at what is inside of main.ui, it's saving all the characteristics that define that window is in XML format, and Python can't execute directly against this XML and do something with it. It's not, the code wasn't written to do that. We need to convert this code from XML format into Python code so that our Python program can call it. And to do that, we need to open a command window in this same folder. And a nice shortcut method to do that is go to our address bar and type cmd. It'll open a command window inside that folder. And we need to type the pyqt command pyuic5 space, and then the name of our user interface file, which is main.ui, and then the parameter for generating the output file name, which is -o, and then main, and we're going to use a suffix so we don't get our files confused, main_ui.py. And then that command, as you can see, it generated a file called main_ui.py. And let's look at how that's different now from our XML file. Yep, we have Python code. So now let's look at our test program, our test2.py, and see what we have coded in here. What we have in here is the bare minimum bit of code that we need in order to display that window that we just created. And to do so, we import the Python code that we generated from the UI. And as you remember, it was main_ui.py. So the import command is import main_ui. You don't need to put the .py on the end of it. And we need to reference the class that's inside that main UI. If we look at that, it created a class called UI_main window. And to reference that, you'll reference the name of the source code that it's in, main UI, and then dot, and then the name of the class. And this is just the syntax that you need to do if you wish to inherit an existing class from this other Python script that generated it. If you want to inherit that class and make your own class, and we'll name it, in this case, my window. And this is just the syntax You don't need to really understand too much of it. Just follow the syntax here where you have this main window, super main window. And in the main section of our Python code, all of this, if executed, will display our main window. So if we type Python and then our program, test2.py, sure enough, it displays our window. So now let's modify our window. We need to associate this to the UI extension to our designer. It's much more useful for us, so we can double click it. So if we choose another app, always open. There we go. So now we've associated .ui extensions to our designer window. So if now we can just double click it. And we want to make a small change. Call this my button now. Hit save. And if we rerun our code, what we're going to see is it didn't update because we still have to rerun that conversion every time. Run that again, and now we can run our code. And now you can see it updated our button. Now this can get kind of tedious to constantly have to rebuild your UI file into a Python file just to run your script. That's why I've included this run bat file. If you look inside the run bat file, it's using one of those bin folder scripts called Python run. And what it does is it looks inside the folder that you're in for any UI files, and it will automatically build them if the Python file is out of date. And then it will call the script that you have passed to it, in this case, test2, and execute that. Therefore, we don't have to, we can make a change to our UI file, and we can simply just run the bat file. And it has rebuilt our UI file and run our script all at the same time. Now there's another thing we can do to save even more time. If you have Sublime, you go to our source code folder, you see there's a folder called Sublime Packages User. These are some custom elements or JSON files that you can integrate into your Sublime installation, and it will automatically update your build command for Python so that if you have edited your Python code, for example, we're going to add a print statement here. Such that if you run the build command, it won't just call Python to execute the source code. It will call Python run, which will build any UI components in our directory, and then call Python to run our script. So if we run our build, any changes that may have been done to our window will be updated, and it will save our code changes in our Python script, and it will run all of those changes. So we can see our print statement here, we can see our UI. Just demonstrate that one more time. We'll change our button to my favorite. Click save. Now I just run the build command, and we can see our button has been updated without having to manually run the PyUIC command. So from now on, I'm going to be using that instead of the run command. If you don't have Sublime, you can use the run command, or you can integrate into your own, whether it's VS Code or PyCharm, the ability to have it execute Python run to pass it to your program. And if you do that, Python run will redirect all the output to standard output. So you'll see it in your log window, and it will automatically build all of your Qt components. So let's update our UI with a couple other changes. I want my button to actually do something. So I'm going to have it actually say hello, and when I click it, I want it to actually print out the word hello in my log window. So to do that, we need to know what is the object name of our hello button. And in this case, our object name is push button with a capital B. So if we save this and go to our code, we'll delete that print statement. We need to add an additional method in our class, and we'll call it, we'll use the special automatic method for buttons, which is called on underscore the name of our button, push button, capital B, underscore clicked. So there's a few methods that are automatically built. We need to add our self command there. It just by naming it correctly, this method will get triggered when I push this specific push button is clicked. So if I put a print statement in here, and now if I hit my F7 button for building, it starts my application, and if I click the button, I expect to see the word Alan in my log window. And right away I see Alan twice. I didn't actually hit the button twice, I only hit it once. The reason that's happening is there's a quirk, at least within Qt5, where we need to add a decorator for these special built-in commands like on clicked, and it's called @PyQt capital S slot. If we add this decorator, this will prevent it from getting double called. It'll just call it once. But if we run it, you see I'm going to get an error because I have not imported this command yet. And I know that happens to be under from pyqt5.qt core import pyqt slot. Now if I run it, I won't get an error. And if I click it, I get one print statement. But I can still click it as many times as I like. Let's add one more button to our UI. And I could just drag another button, or if I want to use this existing button as a template, I can use the control key and drag it, and it'll make a copy. I'll change the title of this one to clear. And you can see the name of our object is push button 2. So hit save. And we'll repeat this section of code. And we'll change the name to push button underscore 2, clicked. And we'll have it say the word clear. So now if I run that, I have two buttons, one that says Alan and one that says clear. Now we want to do one more thing with this. Rather than have it be a print statement, we want to actually see this print statement, but we want to see it inside of our user interface, our GUI. One of the common features inside a GUI is a status bar, and it just so happens that when you create a main window, it also creates, if you look at our object inspector in the top right, it creates a status bar for us. And we can see the name of our status bar is actually just status bar. So if we add some code in here, instead of a print statement, comment that out, we need to update our status bar. And if you're like a lot of programmers, you don't like to, you may not remember the syntax for every command. So you reference existing code. And what I like to do there is I like to search through existing code for certain keywords that I can remember, and then copy and paste those lines of code for the exact syntax and paste them into my new code. I've already written a program called Codefish. That is my source code engine for my source code. I can have it index all of my existing source code, and then I can just search for the keywords I can remember, like status bar. And here we have our syntax for a clearing of our status bar. We're going to use that here. And look for another reference. Here's a reference for actually updating the status bar. And we'll put that here. And we'll have it say the same thing as before, but to our status bar. And instead of saying the word clear, it's actually going to use this command and method for clearing the status bar. So now if I hit F7, run it, click hello, it says Alan, click clear, it clears the status bar, and I can go back and forth as much as I like. Okay, so that's our first application. There's a lot more we can cover, like icons. We can replace our icon. We can put more code behind these buttons. We can add more widgets to do more, but we'll do that in our next video series. So I'll see you then.